how can you just do what you did to me and just go live your life like nothing happened? So I'm about to talk about like the way we look at planets and stuff like that, right? From like an astrological perspective and the way they be using it for astrology and things of that nature. I'm trying to give like a broader perspective of how you can look at the planets and stuff like that. So when it comes to the planets are like worlds or like star spaces and stuff like that. And we already know stars is like being 5-pointed beings all the way down to 6, 7, 8, ninth dimensional pointed beings and stuff like that. So it's like being a celestial body, aka being like the atmosphere and connecting that in your surroundings and your environment, so we should perform as above, so below, and shit like that. And then from you playing out like a star, and then you can look at like, okay, like the sun is like a star and stuff like that. So it's like a gas. It's like being fuel. It's like being gassed up. It's not being stuck in one shape and form and being in your light body. Your light body ended up being like your mind. That's like your second body. And then from you being a lighter shape and form, it's kind of like learning how to be the master of the elements and also walk on water. So walking above, being stuck, being like it's like not getting, like not soaking into your emotions and feelings, but you being your first expression or your first passion or your first action or your first reaction. You know what I'm saying? Like what was ever going on inside your mind based upon thoughts, ideas, feelings, emotions, which is things the mind produces. Just in general, it's like creating a new organ. So bringing birth and then life and something, and then based upon that sentience and you bringing it to life, it gets condensed into the physical from manifesting and materializing, and then you pluck for that fruit from the original intent of why you did it in the first place for the most part. So it's like an orb or like a sphere, and a sphere is an orb. It's a circumference. It's a diameter. It's like actually being tapped in to your spirit in like a grandiosity and stuff like that. So it's like great spirit or great creator or great designer or like God. Like the words people like to use when they describe these things for the most part. So because it's like a sphere of reality is how you look at things inside your realm of reality and stuff like that. So it's like different worlds. It's like an influence. So somebody being in your fluid, So it's like a vibration and shit like that, because you have your frequency, you have the vibration, and then you have the matter. So that's like the spirit, mind, body, or birth, life, death, and shit like that. So it's like creating something that you relate it, and then you'll materialize it and manifest. Well, you'll manifest and materialize and civilize it into the physical in some way, shape, or form. So it's like the unconscious realm, then the subconscious realm, aka your dreams and imagination, and then the conscious realm. So the physicality of something you can actually touch. So it's like I was saying earlier. So that's how you can look at planets. So don't get lost into the definition. You'll probably look up on Google of how it'd be like. It's like a wandering star, and it's like a celestial body landmass that's revolving around this sun, this realm of reality, and shit like that. Because all the way down to the sun and the moon, the sun is like the star or the light body, and then the moon is like the reflection of the sun. So the sun represents your conscious awareness and how you see and feel about things, and enlightenment, and your the main thing you striving for all the way down to your sun sign and shit like that, right? So it's like your solar plexus and your individuality. And then from you not being lost into one shape or form, is creating your own way of being into your natural natures, and not to conflate into different worlds which don't resonate with each other and stuff like that. So if we're looking at these things as different spaces and different worlds and different spheres of realities and shit like that, and the way you see things and the way you go about reality, all the way down to the different planets and shit like that, right? So based upon these things, right? So you can look at, let's say for example, like, okay, when we talk about the planet Venus and like Venusian shit, right? We already know that deals with love, beauty, love, value, appreciation, compromise, beauty, aesthetic, charm, all that type of stuff, right? So the way you love, that's a world in itself. That's a vibration. That's an influence. That's a space you could be in, right? And then let's talk about like another planet, like kind of like Saturn, and that deals with structure and foundation while also getting boundaries, restriction, and limits. But it's the way how one sees reality and shit like that, right? So we already know the way you love, you can't conduct that with the way you structure and found out your life and shit like that, because like that's like when you try to substantiate yourself like on some entrepreneurship, or you dealing with like the business world or like the industry and shit like that, right? And then you try to conduct business based upon love, bound, appreciation. It make you hit the reality that not everyone conducts business that way. They don't really give a fuck about the love. They care about the lucrative in the business aspect of it and shit like that. So they're trying to network. They're trying to capitalize off of something for the most part. They're trying to get some type of structure and foundation. So they're not in that vibration of love and shit like that. The only reason they compromise it is so they can get something out of it, so they can get like a monetary gain. So when you try to conflate love, aka love and appreciation, and you think these people who you meet in these businesses is always going to be there for your business benefit and shit like that, you're going to be sounding mistaken. You're going to see the reality of the situation and shit, because they're just going to be caring about the money and the monetary gain, and the reality of it, of them trying to conduct business. They ain't going to care about how much they love, value, and appreciate you and shit like that, unless they can get something out of it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like different worlds. So when you conflate these different worlds, it creates a darkness and shit like that. It creates like a power control issue. So when people sit there and be like, oh, this nigga is like on a different planet, like this nigga thinking like so outside the box because this, then, the third, this nigga is like in outer space and shit like that. This nigga is in his own imagination. Oh, this nigga on Mars, this nigga on Martian and shit like that. Oh, he a beast because of this, that, and the third. So Mars dealing with your passions, motivations, desires, and intentions and shit like that. That's what that means. He like that person is in their root chakra and shit like that. Their Martian energy is just exalted. They put out a lot of energy and action towards their passions, motivations, and their intentions, and like expressing it very like passionately and things of that nature, right? So it's like they're on that planet right now. But when you try to conflate two different planets for what it's not actually used for, this is what happens for the most part. So it's like that's like someone who has like Mars and Pisces, but then like it play out in like the different signs and shit like that. So the different so based upon the different signs, it's a different star sign. So it's the way it's being conducted and it's the way that is being done and shit like that. So let's say like what I just said, like you have Mars and Pisces, but then you have like Mercury and Gemini and shit like that, right? So if you have Mercury in Gemini, Mercury likes to be in Gemini because it's ruled by that sign. I mean, it's ruled by that planet and shit like that. So that comes with thinking, articulation, communication, and like analyzing and stuff like that. And then Geminis like to do that. They like to be mutable, adaptable, changeable, having multiple ways of their own ways of thinking, communicating, understanding other people's ways of thinking, communicating, and shit like that, right? And connecting that in their surroundings and in their environment, and add a lot of logic and rationality behind how they think. And then if you got Mars and Pisces, so being mutable, adaptable, changeable to your own or other people's ways when it comes to dealing with the emotions and feelings and receiving something out of it and soaking into your emotions and feelings based upon a dream, imagination, creativity, and goddamn knowledge, wisdom, and experiences and shit like that, right? Like that's the only way your Martian energy is gonna play out. It's gonna play out in a Pisces way. So when it comes to your passions, motivations, and intentions, you're only gonna be motivated to do Pisces shit. What that mean? Be into your subconscious realm, be into your dreams and imagination, and shit like that. Be into your illusions, but you're trying to get some type of intuitive outlook out of it based upon some internal emotion and feeling. And then you put that outwardly and shit like that when it comes to your passions and motivations and shit like that. So it's just gonna turn into, oh, they have to do some type of art, they have to do some type of music and shit like that. They have to do something that works for the collective conscious. So taking the individuality and making it dualistic so they can conduct in the surroundings and their environment. So they're the type to be into those type of things and have more experiences when it comes to that. And then when it comes to Mercury type of shit, right? It already likes to think and communicate and analyze and shit like that. But they do that outwardly because it's an air sign. So it's externalizing a whole bunch of logic and rationality based upon how they think. But then when you add that energy into the Martian energy, which is in Pisces and shit like that, right, you're conflating those two worlds. So yeah, they're both mutable signs, but it's two different ways. And then they both square each other because one's an air sign and one's a water sign and shit like that. So when it comes to the way you think and communicate, right, you're going to do it in a way where you want to add a whole bunch of logic and rationality. But when it comes to your passion and motivation, it being a Pisces, and you like to be in our emotion and feeling, you don't necessarily like it's not like you like to be fueled by some type of internal expression or emotion and feeling. You don't really care about the reality of it or the way people think or the logic behind it. You just expressing your subconscious realm or how you feel inside, and you just, you know what I'm saying, you soak in that emotion and feeling. And then all the way down to, let's say you do some type of art and creativity, you just express it. You're not thinking about it that much. Like, you just going into that emotion and feeling. So in day mind, when it comes to this person with displacement, they just care about, do you feel my influence and shit like that? Like, are you in my fluid? Are you in this? Are you receiving this emotion and feeling? And I'm trying to make this a part of the collective conscious in some way, shape, or form and shit like that. Like, do you feel my intuitive outlook of how I see things in my world inside my mind based upon some type of creativity I want to share based upon what's going on in my imagination, all the way down to, let's say they actually have a dream when they go to sleep and shit like that, and then they'll make a song or they'll make some type of creativity or they'll make something that somebody else can be a part of and can like sharing that on social media so people can relate and talk about how they feel about their dream. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's about the feeling and emotion and how you feel about it. Compared to a Gemini, they just care about the thought and idea about the thing, but they don't necessarily care about the emotion and feeling. So it's about the logic and rationality and shit like that. So it's about the social awareness. Like, oh, did you know this? Did you know that? It's about gaining some intelligence. A Pisces not necessarily gonna care about the intelligence behind it. They just want someone to resonate with their emotion and feeling. A Gemini, especially a Mercury and Gemini shit like that, they just caring about the logic and rationality of the debate or the discussion and the conversation. That's it. Like, in their mind, it don't go no further than that. They just trying to get the information. And in the Pisces, they like to get the information, but they just care about the passion and motivation behind. Do someone resonate with how I feel internally and shit like that? You don't necessarily gotta, like, a Gemini may not even feel like that. They might not even feel like that inside. For real. They just want to understand your mind. They just want to know how you think. So they can dedicate off of that and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm trying to make this make sense. So that's how. So it's like, yeah, bro, like these are like different worlds, different auras, different fields of reality, different influence, different vibration. They vibing in different areas. And then based upon what the planet is and then what sign it is, that's the specific way of how you do that. And like that, like, it's like in that world. And then it's all these are different types of things and shit like that. So you got your sun, and your moon, and then you got your Mercury, and then you got yeah. So like, your sun being your actions. I want to break down every single thing. You got your sun being your actions. You got your moon being your reactions and your emotions and feelings. You got Mercury dealing with your thinking, communicating, analyzing, and shit like that. Articulation. And then you got Venus dealing with love, value, and appreciation. You got Mars dealing with your passions and motivations and your intentions and shit like that. You got Jupiter dealing with your experiences and knowledge and wisdom and expansion, contraction out of that. And then you got Saturn dealing with how one sees reality and structure and foundation and boundary, restriction, and limits. Then you got goddamn Uranus dealing with radical change. You got Neptune dealing with dreams, illusions, and imagination and intuitive outlook. And then you got motherfucking Pluto dealing with deep passion motivations and transformation and shit like that. So it's like, yeah, bro, like these are different worlds and different pockets, and then whatever sign that's in, that's how you conduct it in that world. Like that's your specific way of how you look at it. So this is like a higher way of how you can look at your planets and shit like that, right? So from that being like the higher way of how you look at these planets and shit like that, you won't look at it in a way like it make it simpler based upon these celestial bodies of like you going outside and you see the sun and the moon and shit like that, and the atmosphere and the clouds and whatever's going on that day, all the way down to the astrological weather and shit like that, right? And it's not no thing where you go outside and then you see these planets out there, and based upon the planets and the retrograde of what sign it's in because of this, that, and the third. That's just like the like. Bro, like that's like the way the government be using these influences and shit like that to make certain events and things of that nature play out. Even though these are all internal natures in general that you can play out for yourself. So when you in these different worlds and shit like that, all the way down to when y'all be like, oh yeah, I'm at the Plutonian right now, I'm at the Venusian as fuck right now, I'm at the super Mercurial and shit like that, I'm at the super goddamn Jupiterian shit like that, like whatever world that's in, and then whatever sign that is, that's that star formation and shit like that. That's that world you're in. That's the sphere of reality you're in. That's the influence. That's how you vibe in that vibration. And when you conflate these two things, it starts to take away the natural source of the light body and the enlightenment of being in that area. You start muddling it up. You start mixing it up and shit like that for the most part. You know what I'm saying? You have to separate these things into each world, and you should only do it that way in that world. When you try to conflate these things, it start fucking it up. Now you can take other pockets, right, for different circumstances and situations and play out what you need to during that time and get a better way of how you conduct yourself, right? And then from you conducting these things for your natural natures and your internal realm and your subconscious realm, shit like that, it helps you build yourself up in your mind, and you understand why you have certain thoughts, ideas, feelings, and emotions, and then you'll transform and change the way how you go about these things, and then you tap into your chakras and shit like that, and then you'll have an illuminated, not no closed out spaces. So you're not blocking yourself, you actually coming at yourself because you know how to conduct yourself in each world because you're using it in each different pocket, different sun pockets, different moon transitions, and even through these different transitions in the atmosphere all the way down to the sun and moon and these celestial bodies and shit like that, you move as a star and shit like that. You have your own atmosphere. You create these things for yourself. You have your own world. You have your own way of how you be yourself and shit like that. You have your own way of conducting these things. I'm going deep as fuck, but like, yeah, bro, like, yeah. So as above, so below, this is a higher way of how you look at, not even like higher way, but like this is a more expanded way of how you look at your planets and shit like that beyond your sun and your moon. Even though the main things you need to be worried about, right, is your sun and moon and your ascendant. Those like the main thing when it comes to your chart of why you act, like, you know what I'm saying, like your big three. Those are the main trinity of like why you is the way you act, and then your planets and shit like that just add on to it. So don't get lost thinking when you look up online and shit like that, when you be seeing wandering stars and then the planets they move, have their own rotation, gravitational pull, attraction, and intention around around your sun and your moon and shit like that, all the way down to the sun and moon outside and shit like that, and their own gravitational pull. No, it's the sun and the moon, and then your ascendant, and everything else play out after the fact. And then you look at your planets like your worlds and stuff like that, like different chakras, different spaces, different vibrations, different gases, different influences, spheres of reality of how you get attraction and attention on that specific planet and shit like that. And whatever sign that is in, that's the star light, that's the light ray of how it emanates, like how it projects outwardly based upon that planet and shit like that. But like, yeah, bro, yeah,